Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Cardinal HCM ORP Retiree Forum. My name is Lindsay Joseph. I'll be one of your facilitators today. I just want to thank you quickly for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us for the content this morning. For awareness, we are recording today's session. The recording will be sent out later this week to all attendees and all those invited to the forum as well. The forum is scheduled from 10 a.m. until 12 p.m. today, and all attendees have been muted in order to avoid background noise, but we do encourage you to actively participate in the session using our question and answer feature. You can ask questions at any time during the presentation by using the QA panel. Please do not send questions through the chat, though. Our chat is not being monitored and may not be seen. So if you have a question, make sure to use that QA panel. To access the QA panel, you can look at the bottom of your screen and you should see a meeting control bar. If you don't see the control bar, you might just need to move your mouse around to activate it. And you can select that optional icon, which are the three little dots, and then select QA option. This should open up a panel on the right side of your screen, and you can type your questions in and press send to the panelist. Make sure you include your agency name. This will help give some necessary context for our panelists who are answering your questions. We are going to hold questions until our designated QA section towards the end of the webinar, but please go ahead and send them at any time as you think of them. We'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible during the session, and please understand that some of our questions that are asked must be directed back to your agency, as our Cardinal team can't answer things like agency-specific guidance or your agency policies. For any questions that are sent in that require correction mode or need our Cardinal post-production support team intervention, we're going to ask you to submit a VCCC ticket. And please also remember, anytime you submit a ticket, that you include Cardinal in the subject line. That ensures that we can get it routed to our queue and sent over to the appropriate team members to answer your question. For today's forum, we're going to be covering a quick ORP retiree overview. We're going to go into some scenarios where our fabulous presenter Jill will take you into the system to show you the processes for scenario 1 and scenario 2. We'll talk about some helpful queries and reports that you can use as you're processing ORP retirees. Then we'll get into our QA section. We'll reference some training materials so you have those links at your fingertips, and then we'll talk through some additional support to wrap it up. I am now going to hand it over to Jill, one of our benefits module leads. She's going to be walking you through the ORP content and going into the system for some demonstrations before we go into our QA session later in the forum.
Okay, everybody, welcome to our training this morning. What I want to reiterate first and foremost is that the rules surrounding ORP retirees have not changed. When you split a contract, when you don't, who's eligible, who's not, all of that has remained unchanged. So you are already ahead of the game. You already understand the rules. So what we're going to do here today is show you exactly how to get those rules implemented into our new system. All right. So now that that's said, I want to talk to you about job attributes of the ORP retiree. So what will they look like in our system, and how can you identify them? So there are 4 unique attributes to an ORP retiree. There's the position, the employee class, the eligibility field 2, and the eligibility field 9. So let's look at what those look like. So here you can see our position panel, and I have highlighted in red the position number, and you can see there that this is a VPI or a tech ORP position, and this is a through all agencies the last part of this code will be the same. The only variants are the first 3 digits. So if you're unfamiliar with entering HR data, that is how you can identify your ORP folks. So if you're a VCU person, you're going to be VCU ORP 00. All right. Employee class, everyone will have the same ORP retiree employee class. So on the job information panel, you can, if you're looking at that panel, you can easily identify an ORP retiree by the employee class. Then for the benefit program participation page, and those of you who are unfamiliar with that section, that is in the job panel. What you do is you go to job and you scroll all the way down and you'll see a blue link, a benefit program participation, and that's where all the benefit eligibility fields are. So eligibility field 2 is the ORP, where the ORP code goes. And you can see here that I've listed the 3 codes that are, most commonly used for ORP retiree, and the LTD, and then also where you permanently are opting out of health program. All right. The last field is the EligConfig field 9. Now, a lot of folks who are putting these hires in all the time are familiar with Elig Field 9 because that's where you identify folks who are salary full-time, group bill. That's a very common code, but there are a set of retiree codes that you can use, and specifically for ORP. So what we did is we actually put those in this presentation. So you could actually use this as a desk aid if you wish. For your ORP retirees. So you have your retired employees on top, your codes for your linked children, your linked spouses, and your survivors, all there for you. So again, when you're looking at this benefit administration eligibility page, you can see that Field 2 has your ORP code in it for your group, and then there's a specific code for your retiree, your ORP retiree. All right, so let's talk about our retiree scenarios and our demos. So the first scenario that we're going to do is a basic scenario. You have an employee that retires, is currently enrolled in employee plus spouse health coverage, and both the employee and the spouse are early retirees, so they're under age 65. So the steps in the scenario are you're going to retire that employee from his active job because he's becoming a retiree. And then you'll be setting up the ORP record, establish the retirement record within Cardinal. And then lastly, you're going to retire, for the retiree and his dependent, you're going to be enrolling them in the health coverage. All right. So let's do that in the system. And we will demo that. So you can see here that I am in, 1 second, let me get the screen so you can see it. Perfect. All right. Took me a minute to get technical there. All right, so here we are in our screen, and what I'd like to do is I'm going to open a new window here. I'm going to go home so that we all start in the same spot. So here's our Cardinal home page, and what I'm going to do is I am going to go look at this person's benefits because whenever I'm doing something to someone's benefits, I really want to see where they are right now before I make any changes. So I'm going to go ahead and put this employee ID in. I hit search. And you can see here we have our employee Wyatt Morgan. And Wyatt has, you can see displayed here on his benefit summary, is all of Wyatt's information. Okay, he's enrolled in the ACC2 plan with self plus spouse, and he's got some other benefit coverage as well, including a flex admin fee, and he's also waived the premium reward. He hasn't qualified for that. So now we know that Wyatt is in 2-person coverage and his plan is ACC 2. All right, and then before I go any further, I want to take a look at both Wyatt and his spouse to see what the ages of those two people are. I just want to gather all that information so I can determine whether I need to split that contract out. So let me go and I will explain how I get there. I'm going to go to the navigator. I'm going to click on navigator. I'm going to see this little house with the line. That's going to bring me back to my root menu. And what I'm going to do is look up Wyatt's age. So I'm going to go to Workforce Administration, Personal Information, and then Modify a Person. And you can see here that Wyatt's EMPL ID has transferred over, so I don't need to type that again. I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to see here in the biographical details that Wyatt's birth date is in 1966, so he is 56 years old and not Medicare eligible. Now I just need to check on his spouse. So in order to do that, I need to look at his dependent information. So I'm going to grab that ID just in case I lose it. I'm going to go back up to this navigator bar, and I am going to go to dependent information. Now I'm going to go back to the root menu by clicking this little home button, and I'm going to click benefits, employee dependent information, and then update dependent beneficiary. Again, his ID stayed. I'm going to hit enter or search. And here I can see Charlotte, which I'm going to assume is his only dependent, so that's his spouse, but we can double check. We'll just go to his personal profile. And you can see here Charlotte's here, and Charlotte's date of birth is 1970. So Charlotte also is under 65. So now we know what plan the employee is enrolled in and what their ages are. They're both not eligible for Medicare. All right. So what we need to do first is we're going to retire Wyatt. So I'm going to, again, grab his ID. I'm going to go to my navigator. And this I'm doing as an HR administrator. So some of you listening are going to be benefit administrators, and some of you are going to be HR administrators. Some of you have both roles. So, and you can do all of these transactions. But for those of you that just have your benefit administrator role, you're going to have to work with your HR administrators to get this piece done. All right. So I'm going to go out to the menu and go to Workforce Administration, Job Information, and then Job Data. It's going to hit search or enter here. And I've brought up Wyatt's information. So you can see here that there's really been no change on Wyatt's record since his 710 agency-wide increase. So I'm going to go ahead and add a row for his retirement by hitting the plus sign here. And that's going to add a row. Notice it defaults today's date, but Wyatt is not retiring today. His retirement is going to be 11/1/2022. Okay, I'm going to tab out of that field. And here I need to select an action reason. So I am going to select retirement ORP. That's what my action reason is going to be. Now notice that when I put the effective date here of 11/1/2022, that put Wyatt's termination date as 10/31/2022. So just so you're aware that it is capturing that last day that he was an employee there somewhere. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I am going to hit save. Now, one thing I want to mention is if you scroll down, see this benefit program participation link that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to click on that, and just some of the folks, we have released, I believe, 2 and 3 folks here. Some of you have been actually changing these fields on the actual active record to be those ORP retiree values, and that's not necessary. We actually need to keep this record, this benefit administration, under his active job or his employment job, we need to keep those values the same so that the vendor will get that termination and terminate the records appropriately. So you do not want to change these values here. All right. So now that we've terminated that coverage, we need to make sure that those benefits terminate that we just looked at before. So now I'm kind of wearing my benefits administrator hat. Now I'm going to go to the on-demand event maintenance page to terminate those benefits. So let me go to, let me get out, benefits, manage automated enrollment, events, and then on-demand event maintenance. I'm going to hit search. And you can see here that I have a retirement event that's just waiting out there, waiting to be processed, and it needs to be scheduled and prepared, which means that we need Ben Admin to run for it to look at the person's eligibility and then make a determination what to do. So I'm going to click on that prepare activity. And you can see that Ben Admin has run successfully, and now this retirement event is open for processing. But you can see here, nothing's happening when I click the election entry button. And that's as expected, right? You need to actually finalize that retirement. So a lot of times we'll get tickets in saying, hey, I can't, this button's grayed out. I can't finalize that termination. And so you need to actually click this button right here in order to activate this validate finalize. So I've done that. I've clicked the finalize button, and now I'm going to validate. All right. So I've done that, and you can see now that the retirement is finalized and enrolled. So that means those benefits are now terminated. So let us now go and just double check that. So I want to go out to the same summary that I looked at before. So let me go to benefits, review employee benefits, and then current benefits summary. I'm going to go ahead and hit search. Now, notice here that it still shows the benefits. Even though I just know that I just terminated them in that termination event that I just processed. And the reason for that is because this page is called the current benefit summary. What that means is current as of today. So as of today, Wyatt's benefits are ACA 2 self plus spouse. So if you need to look at future dated benefits information other than today, you need to actually go out to that health benefits panel, which I'm going to show you right now, and then you'll be able to see that Wyatt's benefits are terminated. So let's do that right now. So to do that, I am going to go again to the navigator. I'm going to go out to that home button. I'm going to click on benefits, enroll in benefits, and then I'm clicking on health benefits. So that brings me right into Wyatt, and I can clearly see now that Wyatt's benefits have been terminated effective 11/1 with the termination row. All right, and if I want to see what he had before, I can click back in the history and I can see what he had before. All right, I hope that was clear to everybody. So now we've done step 1, which is the employee has been retired from his active job. Now what we need to do is set up Wyatt's retirement record in Cardinal. So to do that, we are going to go into job again. So I'm wearing my HR hat. So those of you who have both roles, you're just continuing on. I'm going to go to the navigator. I am going to click on Workforce Administration and then Job Information. Now, once I'm there, I am going to click on Add Employment Instance. And I know that's confusing because this is a retiree, but what we really need to do is establish that retirement record in Cardinal. So I'm going to click on Add Employment Instance. And notice it didn't grab my ID. That's why I've been obsessively copying it so I can paste it in when I need it. There we go. So there's our ID right there, and I am going to hit search. Now, it just searched the system and said, wait a minute, there's another job here for somebody. Do you want to work with that job? And I want to say no here because what I want to do is establish a new job. So I don't want to work with the existing job. So I'm going to say no. And then I'm just going to add relationship. So I'm going to click on that add relationship button. And now I have been presented with a screen where I can put in Wyatt's retirement information. So the first thing I need to do, this always defaults to today's date. You always want to change this to the date that you want the retirement to be effective. So I'm going to say 11/1. And then the hire is already there. I'm going to click on the reason and I'm going to say hire VRSRT use only. All right. I'm sorry. I've been sitting with VRS for the last 3 days. So I picked the wrong one. So it's hire ORP retiree. All right. So now that I've done that, what I'm going to do is I am going to put in Wyatt's company, and then I'm going to put in ORP because I know that that is what we're doing here. I'm going to hit search. And the ORP position is going to pop right up for me. And all the fields underneath that have now been filled in. You're done filling out this page. You can now go to the job information tab, and there are a lot of fields here, but what you really need to worry about is that employee class that we talked about earlier. Now, you might be panicking, oh, I don't see that class here. You need to scroll down in order to see, oh, no, it's right there, ORP retiree. So there is the employee class. And then you're done on this page. You can now go to the payroll page and you want to put your pay group in. Now, you could memorize the pay group, the MNP, or you could just hit the search button, and that's going to be your only option. Okay. Now, the tax location code, you probably have one for your agency that you use. I actually have one memorized, which is 760. I'm going to use that one, but you would use the one that you normally use for your agency. Okay. Now I am going to, there's no compensation because we actually are not paying him through the system. So I'm going to click down on benefits program participation, and I'm going to go ahead and fill out those fields that we talked about earlier. So I am going to look for our ORP, a retiree, and this is a retiree, not a LTD. So I'm going to pick that 007008 code. And then over here, I'm going to actually put in EligConfig field 8, which we fill out for everybody, and that's just a monthly paid person. I'm going to put that there. And then I am going to fill out my Elig field 9. Now you can see this is an overwhelming list. You have that list that you're going to have from this presentation, so you won't have to sort through it all. But what I like to do here is I like to click on this. It's a little hack. You click on this description and it sorts everything alphabetically, and nicely all the retiree stuff goes together. So I am going to scroll down until I can find my retiree. Now, this is not a group bill because this is an ORP. So I'm going to look for the RRDB, Retiree Direct Bill. I'm going to click that. So you can see here that I have filled out the fields I need to for ORP retiree. And then I am going to hit OK. I'm going to get some usual messages that you get when you hire someone regarding headcount, the comp rate being 0, which we don't care about, primary job message. These are all normal messages. These are in the job aids, and you can, and it does say in the job aids that you can disregard these messages. All right, so you get the message of saving page at the top, and now it just dumps you back into this add employment instance. So I'm a bit obsessive compulsive. So what I want to do is make sure that that's saved in the system. So if you're unsure if it's saved, all you need to do is go to the navigator, go out to job data again, and just hit enter or search. And now you can see that Wyatt has 2 records here. He has an EMPL record 0, which is his active job that he used to have. And then he has the EMPL record 1, which is his retirement record that you just created. There it is. All right. So now we've gone through 2 steps. We've retired the employee, and we have established the retirement record in Cardinal. Now the 3rd step, it's actually benefiting the employee. So again, I'm going to grab that ID. Wearing my benefits administrator hat, I am going to go back to the home. I'm going to click on benefits. I'm going to click on manage automated enrollment, events, and then the on-demand event maintenance page. Hit search. And you can see here I have 2 records now. Now I know because I just looked that I'm dealing with the retirement record, which is EMPL record 1. I'm going to click on that, and here waiting for us is the hire event for the retirement record. Now I know it's a little strange to say hire and retirement in the same sentence, but in this case, it's the hire event that you need to work on. So I'm going to go ahead. It needs to be prepared. And when I hit this prepare button, as you remembered, the last thing that we looked at was the schedule. We had scheduled the hire event, and then it was open, waiting for us, and we could click on the election entry page. So I'm just going to go ahead and click on the election entry again. And it brings us right where we were, which is to select a medical plan. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit that search button. I'm going to click on the benefit plan, which is going to sort the list nicely for me. And then I am going to select the ACC2 plan for the employee plus spouse coverage. And I gave a brief explanation of what each one of these codes were for those of you unfamiliar. 1 is single, 2 is employee plus spouse, 3 is employee plus child, and then 4 is family. But we know here that Wyatt is employee plus spouse. So we're going to select that by just clicking right here. All right, so now we have selected the correct plan, and we need to add Wyatt's spouse there. And I believe her name is Charlotte, if I remember right. Let's see if she's listed under the dependent beneficiary tab. So you see these tabs at the top. Dependent beneficiaries is a tab you can select. I'm going to select that right now. And like magic, Charlotte is already there. You don't need to re-enter Charlotte's information, which is a big time saver. So you can actually just go back to option election and select her, or you can enroll dependents right here. I'm going to go back. So I'm going to click on option election again, which is going to bring me back to my regular screen. And then I can select Charlotte here, or I can click on this enroll all button. And Charlotte, it will enroll all dependents that are eligible for that particular coverage level. So it looked to see if there was a spouse, and it put her in the plan. All right, so now that I've done that, I'm going to go ahead and double check my work. I'm going to check I have the correct plan. I have the correct dependent there. I'm going to click OK. And then I notice here that the status now is at entered. So you might be wondering, well, does that mean that they're covered? What the last step you need to do is validate that all the work you did is correct, and it validates it against all those OHB rules that you all know in your head that we've programmed into Cardinal. So I'm going to click that validate finalize, and you're going to notice that that status is now changed. I'm going to click OK to get rid of this message, and you can see finalized enrolled. What finalized enrolled means is that it's taken what you put in the system and it's put it into the system in all those enrollment tables. And tomorrow morning when we run the benefit interfaces, that's going to go to the vendor. Every business day morning, those files go out to the vendors, and this election will now go tomorrow morning. All right, so just to recap, right? We retired the person from his active job. We set them up with a new retirement record in Cardinal. Then we enrolled the dependent and the employee in the health coverage. Now, in the job aid, it talks about other things. It talks about ACA enrollment and things like that. So because this is an early retiree and it's not Medicare, we don't need to do anything to that ACA page right now. But we're going to get into that with the next scenario. All right, so that actually concludes scenario 1. I'm going to go back to my presentation. 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. I had to fight with my laptop a little bit to get this presentation back, but as you can see, we are now at scenario 2. So scenario 2 is a teeny bit more complicated. We are talking about an employee here who retires and is currently enrolled in family health coverage, right? Now the employee is over 65 years of age, but the spouse is not. So as you all know, we need to split out this contract. And here are the steps. I'm going to briefly go over them, but then we're going to do them step by step. So the first thing is we are going to take care of the employee retiree. So we are going to retire them from their active job. We are going to set them up with a new ORP retirement record. We are going to enter the retiree's Medicare information into the system. We are going to update their ACA eligibility. And then finally, we're going to enroll them in Medicare. Now, once they're all set in the Medicare plan, single coverage, we're going to have to take care of that linked spouse. So for that, we are going to have to establish the linked spouse as a record in Cardinal. Then we are going to have to give them an ACA record. And we are going to then enroll the linked spouse and all of the dependents under them into the health insurance. Now, the last thing we need to do, once we've done all that, is we need to establish the link between the retiree or the original subscriber and that linked spouse. All right? So just like last time, what we're going to do is just take a brief look at the employee's information just to make sure that we understand the age, what plan they're enrolled in. So I am going to go ahead and get my Cardinal system up and so you can view it. 1 second. And we are back up. All right, let me see if I can make that a tad bit bigger. Might help a little bit. All right. So what we need to do, I have an ID already selected here. I'm going to go back to the home screen and I'm going to take a look at his benefits to see what he's enrolled in. So I make sure that I enroll him in what he needs. So I'm going to click on benefits, review employee benefits, and current benefits summary. I'm going to throw my ID in the field 0022999630. All right. So we have Raymond Mason, and Raymond is enrolled in the family plan, as I stated, in the ACC 0 coverage. And you can see here that he also has the health premium reward of participant only. And so what we're going to do is just quickly double check Raymond's age and his spouse's age. Going to do exactly what we did before. We're going to go look at the employee's information first. There we go. We're going to go to Workforce Administration, Personal Information, Modify a Person. Going to hit Search. And we bring up the date of birth, and it looks like he just had the big birthday in June, so he's 65 years old. We'll just double check his spouse. We also want to take a look at the other dependents that are under his policy. So I'm going to go back home, going to go to Benefits, Employee Dependent Information, and then I'm going to take a look at the dependent beneficiaries. So, well, I was thinking, you can see up here, the wheel is spinning. That just means that it is waiting to process. All right, there we go. I'm going to go ahead and hit search here. And you can see here that Raymond has 2 dependents. The dependent number 1 is Sarah Mason. And Sarah, if you go to personal profile, Sarah is a spouse. And you can see here that Sarah, she is not 65. So she is not eligible for Medicare. So what I want to do here, and just to save yourself some time, and you'll do this after the first couple you forget to do it with, you want to write down Sarah's information, because you're going to need it when you establish that record, that linked dependent record for Sarah. So you are going to want to write down the birthday, the social security number. You're going to need Sarah's address. So just jot down all those things, and also Sarah's name. You can see here Sarah Mason, but if you click on view name, you're going to be able to see Sarah's middle initial, which is helpful. So you want to jot down the name, the address, the birth date, the social security number, all things that you'll need later on in this process. Okay, so that's Sarah. Now let's take a look at dependent number 2. So dependent number 2, sorry, the system is frabbising. That's what we call it around here. There we go. Dependent number 2 is Emily, so a daughter. And you also want to jot down Emily's date of birth and social security number, because you're going to need that when you're enrolling her later. So to do that, you would go to personal profile and you would jot down the date of birth and the social security number. So those of you who might be wondering, are they really displaying people's social security numbers and birthdays? These are all scrubbed. This is all scrubbed data. It's not real employees that we're dealing with here. All right, so I've jotted down those things for both dependents, and now what I need to do is actually go to retire this employee. So I'm going to go ahead, following the exact same steps as I did last time. I'm going to enter that retirement record. So wearing my HR hat, I'm going to go to Workforce Administration, Job Information, and Job Data. Going to bring up that record. You can see here again, last thing done to this employee was on 7/10/2022. So I'm going to need to add a row here. I'm going to also make this an 11/1/2022 retirement. I'm going to select action of retirement, and this time I'll select the right one, the right reason, which will be the ORP retiree reason. Just give me 1 second while the system cooperates. There we go. So I have done all that. I can scroll down and hit save, and that piece is done. So I can cross that off my list now of steps to do. Now what I need to do is I need to set up the retiree's Medicare information. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that ID just in case. I'm going to go to, and then this is in the benefits side of the house. I'm going to go back to the home base, and I'm going to click on benefits, employee dependent information, and then benefits personal data. So you can see here that this benefits personal data, Raymond does not have anything. I can tell that because this is today's date. It comes in the system. It makes it look like there's something here already, but it's not. This effective date just defaults to today's date automatically. I'm going to go ahead and change that to the retirement date. And then I'm going to select Medicare A and Medicare B. And then I'm going to give a reason, which is age. Now, don't worry, remembering all this, it's all in the job aid. It tells you exactly what to fill out on this page. So now that I've done that, I am going to go ahead and hit save. Now, if I did have Raymond's Medicare number, if Raymond had shared that with me or put it on the enrollment page that he had, the enrollment form, then I could pop that Medicare number in here. If I don't have it, and then a week and a half, 3 weeks later, Raymond finally brings it in, you can come back to this page
add another row, and pop in that new Medicare number with the date that he gave it to you. All right? Okay, so let's move on to the next step. And the next step is we're going to be setting up that new ORP retiree record in Cardinal. So I'm going to, again, grab that ID because I believe on the next screen it doesn't carry forward. So let me go home, and then we're going to go to Workforce Administration, Job Information, and ooh, I put the wrong one, and add employment instance. There we go. And so we need to pop that ID in. I'm going to just paste it in. And then I'm going to hit search. Again, it's going to ask you, do you wish to open the job data associated with this employee that's already in the system? And we want to say no because we're establishing a new retirement record. We're going to add that relationship. I feel like we should have the Jeopardy music here. Taking it a bit longer than it did last time. There we go. So now it's brought us to the work location screen, and just like last time, these are a lot of fields, but there's very little that you actually need to do, and the job aid will walk you through exactly what fields you need to fill out. So first thing first, we need to make sure we put the right date in. So we're going to do 11/1/2022, and then we are going to put our reason in, and that is going to be hire. Is it hire VRS use only? See here, no, I'm sorry, I did the same thing as last time, hire ORP. And then we are going to do VPI because this is a VPI person, and ORP, and then we're going to hit search. Now, when you come in here, you have access to just your agency codes, so it's going to default you to that correct code. There we go. So this is it for this page. So for this page, effective date, reason, and position number is what you need to worry about. And then the next tab, which is job information, only thing you need to fill out here is employee class. And we are going to pick ORP retiree. All right, next tab you need to worry about is payroll. I'm going to select that, and we are going to just hit the search button. You only have one option, monthly no pay. And then you're going to do, again, your agency's code. I'm going to just pop that one in for now. We're going to scroll down to the benefit program participation, and we are going to put in our ORP group number. I'm going to hit 007, then hit search to lower my options. And we're going to select ORP retiree. I'm going to do the payment, the 12-12, which is our LH field 8, and then our LH field 9, which is our retirement, and we had selected RRDB last time, and we're going to do so again. So retiree direct bill. All right, so I am going to go ahead and select OK now, and that's going to establish that record. I'm getting our usual messages, which the job aid will tell you to ignore. And it brings me right back to that page. And again, I'm just going to quickly check the job data to make sure 2 records are there. There they are. So here's your new retirement record you just established. All right, so recap. We retired the employee. We updated the Medicare information, and then we established the new ORP retiree record. Now, what we need to do next is we just need to update that ACA eligibility page, because since the employee is Medicare eligible, we need to make an update to that page. So I am going to go to that page. A couple different ways you can get there. I'm going to go through benefits, employee, dependent information, and then ACA employee eligibility. pop the ID in there, hit enter. And so you can see here that right now, this is the record that was established with their employment with a 1/1/2013 row. I'm going to go ahead and add a row. I'm going to make it effective 11/1. And I'm going to change this always eligible to exclude. Then I'm going to hit save. And I'm done with this page. So again, just to recap, what I needed to do was I added a row, I updated the effective date, and then I changed the status to exclude. All right, so that is done. So now that I've done that, the only thing left to do is to actually enroll the employee in Medicare. So let's go to the on-demand event maintenance page and do that. So I'm going to click on, again, benefits, manage automated enrollment, events, and then on demand. And you can see the two records. You know the one you need to deal with, which is this one, the record 1. And you can see the higher event waiting for you just like it was last time. I'm going to go ahead and schedule it. But this time it's going to look and find that Medicare data that we enrolled, that we put in earlier. And when I click on election entry and look at the plans, you only see the Medicare options. So in this case, the employee has decided to enroll in Advantage 65. So we're just going to go ahead and click on Advantage 65. We're going to click OK, and then validate and finalize. So I'm going to skip the step where we look at the enrollment summary because we know this is an 11/1 enrollment. I'm going to go right to the health panel and double check that enrollment is there. Now you might do this for the first 2 or 3 until you get comfortable with the system and realize that when it says finalized enrolled, that means that the record's out there. You might check every time. After a while, you might skip this step of just double checking to make sure that it's there. But let's just go to benefits, enroll in benefits, and then health benefits. And we will see the new enrollment. So you can see it there, effective 11/1, and this will be transmitted over to the vendors tomorrow morning. All right, so it seems like we have our retiree sorted out. Now we need to worry about that linked dependent. So what we need to do first with the linked dependent is we need to establish their record in Cardinal. So to do that, unlike going to that add employment instance, what we need to do is establish the record from the beginning by adding the personal data in too. So what I'm going to do, and it's all detailed in the job aid, is I'm going to go out to Workforce Administration, personal information, and then add a person because I am literally adding a person to the system. So I'm going to click on add a person. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, change the effective date to 11/1/2022, and I'm going to add a name in. And this is where earlier when I said make sure to write down all that information, where it comes in really handy. Oops. Wow, I'm really glad this happened. So let's try that again so we can all read that error message because I get a lot of tickets on this. 11/1/2022. I'm going to hit tab. And then I'm going to try to click on add name. It says here, the effective date cannot be greater than today when adding or modifying a person. So what that means is the effective date cannot be greater than today. Usually these messages do tell you what's wrong, but I do understand when we get tickets because sometimes when you get an error message, you know, it's just unsettling, so you send that ticket in. But usually if you read the message a couple times, it will tell you exactly what you need to do. So in this case, it's saying literally that you can't have an effective date that is less than today, that's greater than today's date. So I'm going to go ahead and just make that adjustment. So I am going to go to current date. I'm going to click on add name, and I am going to add my spouse. Sarah J. Mason. I'm going to refresh that name, hit OK. And I am going to, as soon as the system lets me, here we go. Now I'm going to add Sarah's date of birth, which I also wrote down as 7/22/1968. Tab out of that field, don't need to worry about any of these. And again, the job aid will tell you what you need to fill out. I'm going to go down to gender, and I'm going to select female. I'm going to select married. And I'm going to add in Sarah's social security number, which again is just made up, but we'll put it in. Okay, I'm going to hit tab. Now, sometimes when we do this and you click tab out of this field, you get a message, and that message says this person already exists in the system, and it gives you an employee ID number. Now, when that happens, that means that the spouse is a former state employee. Now, you could have done a person search to find that out beforehand, but if you don't do that and you come to this stage and you get that error, what you need to do is just get out of this screen, and all you need to do is add an employment instance, which I've already shown you how to do. But just be prepared for that message, because it will happen. I think I worked with VRS yesterday. We put in about 8 people, and about 3 of them we got that message on. All right. So this person was not a former state employee, so we're going to just go ahead and proceed on with adding our person. All right, so contact information. We had already written down the address from when we looked earlier, so I'm just going to add that in. Now, let me go back, because you see where it says add address? We get a lot of tickets as well, because people, when they go, they're so in tuned when they are adding things into the job data that what they need to do is just add right here. This is how you add an address. But you can tell that that's really not how you do it. This is how you add a mailing address or something like that. You don't want to do that here. I'm going to get rid of these rows I just added. To add an address here, you need to click on the add address detail, and then click on add address, and that's what brings you to the fields where you can actually add. So I'm going to go ahead and add that address in. 114 Bluebird Spring Drive. And that is in Blacksburg, Virginia, 2406. Let's put that right there. 24060-1544. And I have the county, so I might as well use it. Okay. So we have our address in the system. I'm going to click OK, and it brings me back, and now you can see effective 10/20, there's an address. I actually have the phone number. It's not really necessary, but we'll just throw it in there. 540-123-8765. I'm going to tab out. You can see I didn't need to put any dashes in. It automatically formats it. And then as far as the email, that's actually pretty important. What we're going to do is put a personal email in, and it's going to be noemail@virginia.gov. And then I'm going to select employee provided email. I don't have the spouse's email address. Most likely this person's probably not going to go in the system. So I am just going to leave that as is with no email at virginia.gov. Now that I've done the contact information, under the regional tab, you don't need to do anything. You can just leave that tab alone. And then organizational relationship, you're going to select employee. And I know that's a teeny bit confusing because this really isn't an employee, but we're establishing that retirement record, so we need to select that. The last thing I need to do prior to selecting add relationship is I need to go to this VA person info, And you can see this linked participant ID. I want to put in the original subscribers not social security number, their employee ID number, so that I can have that link be established. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So 0022999630 is that ID of the original subscriber. I'm going to hit, no, I'm not going to hit save. Sometimes I hit save by mistake and I get an error message that pops up. If you get that error message, just remember that what you need to do is go back to organizational relationships and click add relationship. All right, so now we're back to the same old page that we had before, where we're going to put in those few details, position number, employee class, and then just finally get that record added to the system. So again, it defaulted to today's date, but what we're going to do here is we're going to actually put the retirement date in. And it took. We're going to select hire ORP retiree for reason. And then once it's done, we will put our position number in, VPI ORP, and then we'll hit search. And there's our position. Nothing more on this page. We go to job information and we are going to select ORP retiree. Nothing more on this page. We're going to hit payroll. We're going to do monthly no pay or select the option there. I'm going to put in my tax location code. Nothing more on this page. I'm going to click benefit program participation and I am going to put in my ORP retirement code, which is 007008-000. I'm going to indicate that they're monthly paid as far as retirement goes. And then here is where we need to make sure we select the right code. So again, I'm going to click on description and it's going to sort everything and put all the retirement stuff together. And here, when I was establishing that retirement record for the employee, remember I put RRDB for retired employee, but now we are actually establishing that record for the linked spouse. So I need to look for the correct code for that. So you can see here, all the linked spouse codes are together. So I can now select retiree linked spouse employee bill. And I'm going to do that. So really, when you're establishing a retirement record, whether you're doing it for the employee or for the spouse or for the surviving spouse or for the linked child, the only difference that you are having with establishing that record is what you're putting in Eligibility Field 9. All right? So I'm going to go ahead now. I'm going to hit OK. We're going to get the normal messages, which I've already told you to ignore. And once we've done that, it brings you back to the original page. And now you see you have this new ID that has been established. And I'll tell you now, it's a good idea to write this ID down so you don't have to look it up later. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I have that ID. I'm going to copy it into my browser. And now what we need to do is we need to establish that ACA record for this linked spouse. So I'm going to go back to my ACA page. Benefits, employee dependent information, ACA employee eligibility. Pop that ID in, hit enter, and you can see here that Sarah Mason, 11-1, and the eligibility status is to be determined. And we want to make that always eligible. And we're going to scroll down and hit save. And that's the extent of what you need to do on this page. And this is just, it's for reporting to make sure that we report her correctly to the IRS for the enrollment. All right, so we can check that box off. We've now done that. And now what we want to do is enroll the linked spouse in the coverage. So I am going to go ahead and go to my navigator. I'm going to go up to home. I'm going to go to benefits, manage automated enrollment, events, and then on demand. I'm going to pop that ID in that I saved. And so now we have Sarah's event waiting for us. It's a hire event because we were establishing her retirement record. We're going to click on schedule prepare. And now we can click on election entry and enroll them. So here I'm just selecting the option code. And before, when we looked up the retiree's information, we wrote down that he was enrolled in ACC 0 family coverage. So now, because we're just enrolling the linked spouse and the child, we're going to select the same plan, but we are going to select basically the linked spouse and child coverage, which is ACC 0 and then option 3. Now, wouldn't it be nice if I could just click on enroll all and it would have brought that dependent over? But that's not the case here. You actually have to add the dependent back in, which is why we wrote down all of Emily's information so we could add it to this new record. So in order, I did that kind of fast, so let me go back. So what I need to do is I'm going to select that ACC 0. So I'll do that with option 3, which is employee plus child. Then I'm going to go up to dependent beneficiary tab or tile, and I am going to click on change add dependent data. So that's just basically adding the dependent data for that child, Emily, into the system. So I've clicked that link and now I'm here. It says dependent beneficiary number 1, nothing there. So we're going to go ahead. It took our enrollment date, which is the 11/1, so we don't need to update that, but we do need to click on edit name and we're going to add in Emily. Emily C. Mason. I'm going to hit refresh. Name looks good. I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the address. Now, here I can just click on the same address as the employee. It will automatically load it, and I'm not going to worry about a phone number for a child. So I'm just going to go on to the next panel. So here I've jotted down Emily's birthday, which is 9/14/98. And then I'm going to indicate what relationship she is, and she's a child. And I'm actually, because she was on the plan before, we know she's an approved dependent. I'm going to go ahead and select her as approved. I'm going to put her gender in. She's single, so I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to throw in her social, which is, again, just a fake one. Oh, this is a message that we get, and I'm really actually glad we got this message. What this is, a lot of people send us tickets in about this message, and let's read it together and we'll decide what we need to do. So it says, warning, national ID already is in use for this dependent, and it gives you employee ID and then a dependent number. So it's saying that this dependent already exists and is being used for this employee ID, and it's this dependent number too. A national ID cannot be used within the same country for 2 different individuals. The national ID you entered is already in use by another employee, dependent, or applicant, okay? So what it's trying to say is that the national ID you're trying to use is already used by another employee. And we already know that, don't we? Because this dependent was on the original subscriber's coverage. This is what we call a warning message. It's not a hard stop. All you need to do is click the OK button and you can move on with your life, right? So no need to submit a ticket on this. Just click OK and you can go on with adding the dependent. So what we've done, to recap, we put the name, the address, the date of birth. We indicated what the dependent was, and then we put the social in. I'm going to click OK now. Again, got the message, not going to worry about it, going to click OK. We are now back at the page where what you can do is actually attach that dependent that you just added to the system to the benefits. So I'm going to click on option election, go back to that enrollment, and now when I click enroll all, it's a dramatic pause right now. There she is. There's Emily. She is now attached to the coverage, and we can now click OK and validate and finalize. And now if I go to Sarah's benefits, I'm going to see that she is enrolled. So let's quickly do that. Benefits, enroll in benefits, health benefits. Going to hit search. And you can see now that this linked spouse now has coverage effective 11/1, and there is her coverage plan and her self plus child, and underneath it you have Emily. This will go over tomorrow morning on the interface. All right, so we have done that. We have enrolled the spouse and the dependents. Now let's go ahead and do a link. We want to make sure to link both sides of this relationship. So what we did when we created Sarah, what we did was we already attached that original subscriber to her record. So we know that that link exists. We need to go back to the personal data information for the original subscriber, and we need to put in that new ID we just created for Sarah. So let's do that right now. So I'm going to go to Workforce Administration, Personal Information, and then Modify a Person. And I am going to enter in the original subscriber, not Sarah's, but the original subscriber number. Hit Enter. Now, on this page, you see the tabs up at the top where it says VA Person Info. You're going to click on that, and you'll see this link participant ID, EMPL ID. That's where you're going to put Sarah's ID. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. That's why I wrote it down, so I didn't have to look it up. And I'm going to hit Save. And it is saved. So now we've linked Sarah to Raymond and Raymond to Sarah. All right. So the last little bit that we're going to talk about, and this is something that I'm actually going to go back to Raymond's summary for. I'm going to go all the way back to benefits, review employee benefits, current benefit summary. So now let's look at Raymond's current benefits. So he was enrolled in ACC 0. He was enrolled in Health Premium Reward. And so we took care of the ACC 0 part, right? We have the established the retirement coverage, which is Medicare, and we've covered the family in Sarah's policy. But then we have this Health Premium Reward. And we can see here that the Health Premium Reward was done, but it was just done for the employee, not for the spouse. So we don't really need to do anything to give Sarah her premium reward because Sarah didn't do anything. So she doesn't get that premium reward. Had she had done the premium reward and we came here and this said that it was both the employee and the spouse, then what we would have done is you would have gone to the BAS activity table, you would have entered in a FSC event, and you would have enrolled Sarah in that individual only premium reward. But you know what? She didn't do what she needed to do, so we're not going to have to do that. But that is all detailed in the ORP retiree job aid. So those steps can be found there. All right. So recap, we took care of the employee. We added the linked spouse and benefited them, and we have linked that record. So that actually concludes scenario 2. All right, let's get back and we'll see if we can do it a little bit more smoother than we did last time to the presentation. Apparently not. Oh, there we go. Here we are. And we're back. All right. So, helpful queries and reports. So when I went through all of the queries preparing for this, there were really two that I found extremely helpful. The first one is the HR employee data query, which is VBN HR DATA. Now, that query is going to show you all of the HR data associated with every single person in your agency. And not all of the data, but all of the data that's pertinent to the benefits. So it's going to show you employee ID, benefit record, EMPL record. It's going to show you all those eligibility configuration fields. It's going to show you if somebody has a linked spouse attached to them. I really encourage you to go out and run the VBN HR data query, because I think you're going to find it useful for lots of different things. And then the second one is the health census query. Now, what this query is basically it gives you an entire census of everybody in your agency, what their current health enrollment is, and if they do have dependents, it also lists the dependents. So that's going to be super helpful for your auditing and also for any kind of, any kind of reporting that you need to do to your upper level management. All right. Now, one thing I wanted to a little trick I've been teaching in our user labs that we have going on is that if you're unsure of what kind of benefit queries are out there for you, we do have all the tools that we're going to talk about in just a few minutes on the Cardinal website. But if you just go into the query viewer and you type in V_BN and hit search, it's going to bring up all of the benefit queries. And if you have some time, go through and run each one of those queries, because each one is a little bit different, will give you different data, and I think it's going to be helpful for you to understand what all of those are, and so they can use them. All right, so that being said, let's move on to reports. So we have the benefit eligibility audit report. Now, this report does many different things, but a couple of the things that it does is it identifies retirees and ORP retirees as well that are approaching age 65. And there's a separate report for the dependents approaching age 65. So you probably want to run that on a monthly basis. What it does is it gives you everybody who's going to be turning 65 within the next 90 days. So you can project it out. If you need to separate out those contracts, you can do it well ahead of time, so there's no break in coverage. So that's what that report is for. Then there's the Cardinal enrollment report, and this is going to look really familiar to everybody, because basically what we did is we took the best enrollment report and we slapped the Cardinal name on it and it looks exactly the same. So I think the only difference in the report is that the best report gave you the number of dependents covered and this one doesn't. That's it. Everything else is exactly the same. So run that as well. I tell a lot of my BAs that send tickets in that report is just so crucial to the auditing you have to do every month. The nice thing about the Cardinal enrollment report is that you can run it right now for October 1st, and you can run it for November 1st. It's an Excel format, so you can compare those two Excel spreadsheets, and it's really great. It's one of my faves. All right, so let's go moving on to our question and answer.
Perfect. So we are just going to take a few minutes here. We're going to go on mute as we take a look at some of the questions that have come in. Many of you have submitted some already, but please feel free to take this time while we're on mute to think of any additional questions that you have, and go ahead and send those in using that Q&A feature. So we'll go on mute and we'll come back in just a few minutes to start answering some questions out loud. Okay, so we have a few questions that we're going to talk through right now. I'll hand it over to Sarah and Jill for the question and answers.
Jill, can you go back and talk about how you determine what Medicare dates to use when you were entering in the Medicare eligibility information?
Yeah, so we got a question regarding, there was someone who had been working with one of our reps from Release 2, and they had been told to put in the original date that the retiree had been eligible for Medicare. And so that is something that we actually over time have determined is not necessary, because that date does not actually get transmitted anywhere in our system to the vendor. And having that date established in our system, it actually was causing some issues. So what we found is it's best for us to use the retirement date when establishing that Medicare record in Cardinal, knowing that that date is going to just be the date that, they originally were in Cardinal as Medicare eligible.
Thanks, Jill. Can you talk about how you determined what ACA eligibility status to use? The retiree that was Medicare eligible got a different status from their spouse.
Yeah, great question. So basically, the reason why I actually had to go in and establish or change that retiree's ACA eligibility was because he was actually enrolled in Medicare, and we actually we report that differently for the ACA. So we needed to exclude him from the ACA reporting. So that's why because he was enrolled in Medicare, I went into the ACA and excluded him. And for the spouse, because we were establishing a new record and she wasn't enrolled in Medicare, I had to go in and establish that eligible record for her in ACA. So it really is all about what enrollment you are doing for that particular person. So if you are, if it was the exact opposite and the employee was under 65 and the spouse was over 65, then I would have done the opposite. I would have excluded the spouse because she was enrolled in Medicare, and then the employee would have retained their always eligible status.
Thanks, Jill. We have a question about if an employee is going to permanently cancel and decline retiree coverage. When they hit that signed retirement form saying, I'm not going to participate, what does the VA do?
Right. So basically, when people are permanently waiving, so they are no longer going to be eligible to come back into the program, what we need to do is we need to establish that retirement record, first of all, because we need to have that retirement record in Cardinal. But when we establish that record and go through the add employment instance, when we get to the eligibility field 2 value, which actually, let me just quickly, I'm going to quickly show it just so you see the valid values. You're going to see the 9s here, 9 9s, and that means permanently opt out of health programs. So if you come to a record and you see that EligConfig field 2 has all 9s in it, it means that the employee on their enrollment form has indicated they are permanently opting out of coverage. So what you would do is establish the record, put in the 9s on the eligibility field 2, and hit save, and then there'd be nothing else necessary from that point on.
Give us one more minute. We're going to go on mute to take a look at any additional questions coming in.
All right, Jill, we have a question about a retiree who no longer wants to cover a dependent. So if you've established a second record for the spouse who's, and that spouse now needs to be dropped from coverage, how would you do that?
So what I would do in that case is if we have a linked spouse that's in the system just for health coverage and that spouse has elected not to participate anymore, then what I would do is I would actually go to their HR job data and I would enter in a termination resignation. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's the code we use, termination resignation. And that would in fact automatically terminate the benefits, and there'd be no other action necessary.
Great, thank you, Jill. We have one other question about the email address and ESS access. Can you talk about how retirees will have ESS access if they provide an email address and register?
Yeah, sure. So when I put the no email at virginia.gov, that is because I did not have that on the enrollment form at the time. So if a BA is able to get a
linked spouse's email address, personal email address, we would encourage you actually to put that in there so that they could have access to employee self-service and participate in open enrollment during that time, to change the coverage. So if you do have it, please put it in there as a personal email address, and that will establish their ESS coverage.
Great, thank you, Jill.
Okay, so if you've submitted additional questions via the Q&A panel, please go ahead and remain on the forum, stay in the webinar so that we can answer you directly. We'll have Sarah answering questions here. We're just going to take a minute to talk about some additional support resources for you. If you have additional questions that are not answered in the webinar, or you have something that you think of, go ahead and submit a CCC ticket using Cardinal in the subject line and providing as much detail as you can so that we can get those questions answered as well. So we have some additional support materials to talk about, and the first being your agency support contacts. So your agency support contacts, you all have agency resources. Some agencies have elected to set up an internal shared mailbox. Other agencies have a specific point person to go to. Once you've exhausted your Cardinal website resources, so those job aids like the ORP Retiree Guide that is posted to the website and also posted in the chat, your best bet, your first step should be to go to your agency support contacts. Those contacts will have additional information on your system usage, your agency-specific policies, and any procedures that might need to happen outside of the system. We also have user labs still going on. So we have user labs going till 3 p.m. today, and then next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, so the last week in October, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, user labs will be offered here at the Cardinal Project offices. We have some trainers as well as app team members. User labs, we'll have additional trainers here next week if you all need help with any production entry. The next one down is our CCC ticket. Again, if you have questions or you can't attend user labs and you want some help, then you can submit that ticket. Again, please put in Cardinal in the subject line. That'll get it over to us, and then we will make sure we have a team member answer that ticket. And then finally, as always, OHB is your go-to resource for that. So ohb@dhrm.virginia.gov for any policy-related questions. Okay, at this point, this is the end of our ORP Retiree Forum today. Just again, a couple of reminders. We have that job aid posted on the website, which goes into plenty of details around the processes that Jill covered today, including some special tips and notes about tackling those messages that you guys saw and any of the content that Jill was walking through today as well. Again, if you have questions that you've submitted via Q&A and they haven't been answered yet, please go ahead and stay on the webinar for a few minutes. We are going to go on mute, but we'll be answering you directly. And as always, we're here to support. Please reach out via BCCC, and hope you all have a great rest of your week.